On Breaking Jazz from bassist Mauricio Morales and Adam Hersh. Name of that one, Reminiscence, coming from their debut recorded collaboration between Dreams and Twilight. That one out last month. Joining were Warren Wolf on vibes, Mike Moreno on guitar, Gary Novak on drums, all backed by the elegant gravitas of the Rogue Lemon Collective string quartet. And now I am going to try to bring these guys up again, and let's see if we are facing the same problems we had before. Now, the echo is still there, but it's just slight, right?
I think it's okay. Yeah, we can make this work.
We can make this work. We can make this work. Sorry for the inconvenience on that, guys, but sometimes live radio can be tricky. I am joined now on Breaking Jazz by the brainchildren of those last two tunes that you heard, bassist Mauricio Morales and Adam Hersh, pianist, both instrumentalists, fine instrumentalists, and also really fantastic writers. That really is kind of the strength of this album. Adam, the tune we started off with from both of you guys, Low Life, I know that's sort of a winking nod to Wayne Shorter's 1995 album, High Life. And, I wanted to ask you about that Wayne Shorter influence. There's so many musicians who cite Shorter as an influence. And I think what's cool is that everybody kind of has a particular strain of Shorter that they most closely identify with. So I guess my question is, how much do his ideas permeate your own sort of compositional instincts and impulses? And what's like your musical home base when it comes to Wayne Shorter's stuff?
Sure. Well, thank you for your kind words about the music, and thanks for asking. I actually transcribed that entire Wayne Shorter record, High Life, and I performed it a couple times in LA, in town here. So I spent a good amount of time with Wayne's music, and I would say that the harmonies and melodically the way he writes and just the overall spirit of the music is something that I try to capture. He always lets the people that he hires on his records be themselves. And that's something that I really value in the music, is that collaboration and unique voices in the music. So
I love that. And if I may just sort of wax on what drew me to this record, this thing it's no small undertaking, just one man's take on it. But to me, the compositions are accessible and land with emotional resonance, and yet they're definitely complex, and you manage to bring on these incredible side musicians, and they take to the tunes you've written really, really well, like Fish to Water, which is I'm sure why you specifically targeted those particular guys. But then you guys take it to the next level and just kind of go for broke, bringing in the strings, which to me is just the pièce de résistance when it comes to lending the whole thing just an added layer of, for lack of a better word I've used 3 times already, gravitas. If you can pull it off, and I think you guys do pull it off, that sort of thing is super cool to me, which I think is just a very circular way of asking you guys, was there a sense between the two of you like, we're not going to be shy with this one, we're going to sort of announce our presence with authority?
I think it is a combination of many things. The truth is that the way this record was born was very organic. It was not, in fact, thought of as a record when we started writing the music. It was just a way of getting to know each other musically. During this time, our friendship, our time together being spent both in and outside the bandstand allowed us to get to know each other to the point that we eventually decided that a record was a good idea. And I think that actually, obviously from a financial standpoint, especially when this is a project that's independent, which it is, when 2 people are involved, putting together a larger ensemble of this nature becomes easier, In fact, I have had the chance to work with strings on several of my records before, but this time we approached it a little differently, in the sense that we aim for the stars. We call the musicians that we admire the most, people that have been huge influences in our development as musicians and as composers as well, you know. And I think we decided that what we wanted to do was create a space where we could embrace that musicianship, their musicianship, the musicianship that means so much to us, while at the same time, you know, exploring our own voices as much as possible, you know, and do it as, you know, co-writers, because there are 3 songs that we wrote together, such as Reminiscence, the second song you played. There's 3 songs that Adam wrote, and there's 3 songs that I wrote. And ideally, what we wanted was to explore both, you know, both of our voices together, but also both of our voices individually, while aiming for this particular project, which ended up being what you hear now on the record.
Well, so many of the compositions, aside from just the technical musical elements, to me are so emotionally evocative, to the point of they have like a cinematic quality to them. And I guess my question is, when you guys are working on the record, is there much conversation between you guys in terms of like what, if anything, you're trying to present emotionally or narrative wise to listeners? Like, is there a thought that you're intentionally communicating something with the audience that is more profound than just sort of musical ideas in the abstract?
Sure. I mean, I think when we started writing together, the music tended towards these like fantasy elements, and a lot of the titles are time-based, you know, the hourglass and reminiscence and these things, or about oceans and rivers and things like that. And when you think about those ideas, the instrumentation being more orchestral kind of makes sense. You know what I mean? The vibraphone and the guitar and the strings and all these palettes that you can bring. And Gary, as an incredible orchestrator on the drums, also matches that orchestral palette, you know? So
my version of that answer would be no. I don't think we wrote the music trying to specifically tell a story. I think the story wrote itself. You know, I think both Adam and I have a very specific approach with writing music. This is one of the things that we very much relate in, which is that our main focus is and has always been making great music, something that really moves us beyond, you know, I don't know, like so much in the entertainment world can be very superficial, right? So for us, the one and only goal is to write something that's beautiful. So at this point, we're writing something together, and truly the music's leading the way. You know, it's like it's happening. The moment we started trying to come up with what each of the songs represents was when we were coming up with the titles, actually, because then we were like, okay, so what is this one about? What does this one make you feel? What does this one make you think of? What does this one? And then eventually we start putting it together, and it becomes like really, you know, cohesive, because after all, it is something that's coming from us, you know. But, you know, instrumental music is so abstract, but at the same time, once you start like coming up with the reasons behind it and the things that you're feeling at the time that you're writing the music, then it starts making so much sense.
Well, it's really beautiful stuff, and I think, as I said in my opening to the show, you guys weren't on the call with me yet, but the strength to me of this album is the writing is so rich and so full of ideas, whether it be shorters or even in the first track on the album, Eurybia. That sounds like a Mauricio composition to me. And I heard there was a Pat Metheny sort of atmosphere to that, which I love. And in fact, for one reason or another, I've listened to this album a couple times through, and that's the one that I keep going back to, because it's just I don't know, it hooked me.
Well, I would say that, first of all, that's a good ear, because Pat's my hero. You know, that's like my biggest influence ever. He's the one musician that I've listened to the most in all of his iterations, and I feel that I very like what he does. Very much resonates with me. You know, his sense of
It wasn't in like a micro sense either. It was more of in a macro, like atmospheric sense.
yeah. That one, however, we both wrote together, and it was actually
Oh, cool.
it was the second song we wrote together actually, and but good ear, good. I mean,
You know, hey man, I can't do what you guys are able to do with your respective axes and lending bringing your musical ideas to life first on paper, then actually expressing them. But I've got a decent ear for this kind of thing, and I know what I like and I know what I think sounds good to me, and that's the best I can do. And that's why I brought you guys on, because I think it's just a wonderful album, and a really artful and thoughtful one. And as complex as it is, I find it to be very accessible. I mean, I don't necessarily think that you need a whole lot of training and
Yeah. Can I touch on that?
Yeah, please.
I mean, I like what you're saying about that, because to me, a lot of the music nowadays, because it's been codified into universities and into school and having to be presented in an academic sense, it can lose the idea of just beauty and melody and interaction between people. And for us, also mentorship, because these are older, more experienced musicians that we're learning from as we're collaborating together, you know. And that's kind of the old school process of this, is someone would come along, like Freddie Hubbard would pick you up and put you in his band at age 22, and you would learn while playing with him. And this is kind of our way of, you know, gaining that kind of knowledge through these mentorships with these musicians, while also letting them come into our world musically. You know, we're the writers, we're the composers and the presenters of the music, but we're bringing other people who are more experienced in to interpret it with us, you know.
another thing that I would say, if I may, is I think that the approach to writing, the way that I see it, the music that I like to listen to is music that's very intentional. In this particular case, or in both of our cases, I think, which is one of the reasons Adam and I work so well together, is that it is never about ego. It is not about like, let's show off how much we can write. Let's show off how much we can play. Let's make this hard because we want to show off that we can play over these changes, or that we can play these parts or whatever. No, you know, I guess if there's any parts in the music that are intricate, it is because out of curiosity we try to explore certain things. But at the end of the day, you know, I think the approach when writing this music is always like, is this something I would listen to? And if the answer is no, then it's not worth a dime, you know. But like every time it's like, we feel like that's like, this is something that we would listen to. This is the kind of music that resonates with us the most. Something that's melodically strong, something that's harmonically strong, something that has an arc, something that has a story to tell, you know, something that is, you know, mindful and intentional, I think.
Well, let me ask you this to piggyback off of that a little bit. Now, I know the Shorter and I know the Matheny, but if you were to talk about, a couple of contemporary musicians, maybe even in your peer group or just a little bit older, who are resonating with you, who's sort of dominating your practice as a music listener these days?
Well, I listen to a lot of old music, but if I have to name a piano player that I really enjoy that's of my age group, there's this cat in Denmark named Rasmus Sorensen, that I think he's brilliant, and I love his writing. Now, it's mostly trio writing. It's not orchestral in this way, but harmonically it's coming from a similar place. And we got to play a 2-piano show out here that was pretty amazing. And I studied with Josh Nelson, who's also delved into this kind of more, you know, orchestral kind of thing at times. And so obviously Josh has influences there. And then one of my biggest mentors right now is Billy Childs, and he's my hero, my ultimate compositional hero. So those are my people.
Cool.
For me, it's interesting because I feel like my musical interest is kind of moving into a lot of different directions. I obviously love jazz and all of my contemporaries and everything that, like, I love Gerald Clayton. I love, well, maybe they are a little older, yeah, than me, but like, you know, like Gerald or or Mike or Shai Maestro or Avishai Cohen, or like, I don't know, like in a lot of newer people. But like also I personally have been very, very interested in video game music. I've been very interested in film score. I've been very interested in metal, although I've always been interested in metal, like since I was like 14 years old. And a lot of different things, you know. It's like I want to find like different types of music that move me in different ways. And also like that has led me into a lot of classical music that it's obviously not our contemporaries at all, you know, but
Yeah.
I don't know, like ideally things that have like that kind of melodic or harmonic or rhythmic strength that move me genuinely.
Yeah, I mean, who are some of the classical influences? I'm interested in that because I think that there's been a lot of stuff coming out recently in the past year or two that is like very, very interesting jazz, classical fusion stuff, and I personally love that stuff and think it's great.
I think that the impressionist kind of music, like Ravel, that kind of thing, is like extremely influential of me in terms of atmosphere. Not as much in terms of melody, but in terms of atmosphere, it has this very dreamy kind of thing in general that to me has always been very, very attractive to me, you know? But also like I like the super intense things that could be like essentially the metal of the time, I guess, like the Tchaikovsky or like the Mahler or the Brahms or things like that, that can be very, very, you know, like energy driven and that has like such great climaxes, you know?
That's so
For me,
fun to think about Tchaikovsky as the metal of the time.
It's the thing is that it's so intense.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I have a particular affinity for 20th century British composers. So there's a guy named Frederick Delius, who I love, that I think is one of the most brilliant harmonic minds ever. Frank Bridge, there's this guy Arnold Bax, all these people who Jim Shveda would play on KUSC, for those who know him as a DJ. And definitely Ravel, Scarlatti, those kind of people, you know, Schumann.
Well, you guys are really cool and interesting, and when I've been wanting to do a third stream show for a really long time, and when at some point, whether I do it here or do it somewhere else, I'm going to bring you guys back on, and we'll
Amazing.
dive deeper into all of that stuff. I want to go out with that tune that we were talking about earlier, the one that you guys co-wrote, titled Eurybia, and again, like I said, this is the tune that really got me to fall in love with the record. You know, as the kids say, I would designate this one a banger.
Yes, sir.
If there's a banger on the record, this is the banger, right? So I just want to leave you with one thought exercise, because I know that you said you don't go into it with narrative in mind, but you are after the fact, sort of post hoc, going on and thinking about, you know, what does this evoke for you? So if someone said you've got to paint something that corresponds with this piece of music, or if you were going to make a music video for this tune, what would that look like, do you think?
That song in particular, and I'm gonna try to summarize as much as I can. Actually, the name Eurybia is very intentional. Eurybia in Greek mythology is a daughter of Gaia and Pontus. Gaia represents the earth, Pontus represents the sea. You know, so I think that this one is a song that basically is very related to nature, and I guess the foundation of it, but at the same time the like the sense of freedom that the sea has, for example. It is untamable, you know, but at the same time grounded. This, I guess that's kind of what we were aiming for. I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for, but
that's good stuff. I didn't know you guys were so. There's a lot of. You're so erudite. I mean, you're prolific. These are intellectual cats. Greek mythology. This is something else, man. That's pretty cool.
Oh, we googled a lot of mythology. Like it was hard to come up with, but let's say that yes, we're intellectuals. Absolutely, yeah.
Well, you know, look, autodidacts. You know, self-taught, self-learned in Greek mythology. Certainly, very, very well trained musically and all that. But it's really a pleasure to have you guys on. You guys are awesome. I think, like I told you guys via email, I'll say it out loud. I think this is one of the best albums of the past year. It's
Thank
super
you.
interesting. The writing is rich and complex, but like I said, I think most accessible and really emotionally evocative. I think it's a wonderful project, and I appreciate you guys coming on with me. Thank you so much for what you do.
That means a
Thank you
lot.
for
Thank you
having
so
us.
much, Matt. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course. So let's end our let's play these guys out with the aforementioned tune. It's the first track off their new album, Between Dreams and Twilight. It's a co-written collaboration between Mauricio Morales and Adam Hersh, with Warren Wolf on vibes, Mike Moreno on guitar, Gary Novak on drums, and the Rogue Lemon Collective string quartet, Morales and Hersh, with Eurybia, and it's Breaking Jazz. Thank you so much, guys. That was great.
Oh,
thank
thank you
you.
so much. Thank you for the great questions too. That was super fun.
Awesome. Well, the echo wasn't that bad in the end.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt super comfortable.
Okay. Awesome.
I have to admit, I realized that it was my fault. I wasn't using my headphones, so you were hearing my microphone with your audio. That's what was going on.
Oh.
Whatever it is, it is.
No wonder I didn't have a problem, because it was my audio that was feeding into yours. So I'm sorry about that.
Oh, good one.
All good, brother. Well, thank you guys again. Continued success, and keep us updated on what you're working on down the line.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much.
Take care, guys.